Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Rukhsana Rahman from Department of Women Studies, Guwahati University. I will be speaking on women in relief camps. As we are discussing the issues of women and displacement, this module will focus light on the problems documented, that is, against women in the relief camps, like violence against women, women's sidelined role in the decision making, their security threat, their problems in education, their health problems, etc. At the same time, this lecture will also focus light on the very crucial role of women in the relief camps in the peacemaking in the conflict zone. Now let us discuss the discussion on women in relief camps. Relief camps. During a state of conflict or natural disasters, entire populations are forced to leave their homes in search of safety and security. In that process of flight and relocation, it is the women who is most affected. Women, often during their flight, face uncertain physical and mental agony, and their condition often remains more or less the same in a post-conflict situation. In the makeshift relief camps, women often face problems of insecurity, lack of privacy, illness, and lack of food. It is not possible to highlight the conditions of all the camps in conflict-ridden areas around the world. One must also remember that circumstances will differ from one country to the other. This section will examine the most common recurring problems that have been documented. Number 1, violence against women. Violence against women is one of the most frequent and prevalent human rights violations in the world. I quote, "The UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women defines violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private life." Unquote. Such incidents of violence are rooted in power inequality and structural imbalances in considering work for men and women. Cases of discrimination and violence against women has now become a global phenomenon occurring in every part of the world. This particularly escalates during times of conflict when women become especially vulnerable. The breakdown in law and order during conflict and displacement leads to an increase in all forms of violence. Most violations against women occur during conflicts and in camp situations. Women in such conditions are subjected to crimes like rape, gang rape, genital mutilation, trafficking, slavery, physical assault, forced pregnancy, and so on. Sexual and gender-based violence, including domestic violence and alcohol abuse, increases in relief camps. This is not to deny the fact that this had not occurred prior to displacement. During their stay in relief camps, women and girls are at higher risk when they set foot outside camp to collect firewood or go to markets, as these camps are usually surrounded by hostile forces. Democratic Republic of the Congo (DRC) refugees who thought they had found safety here in Zemio camp in Central African Republic were attacked when they ventured back to DRC to work their land. As their economic and financial conditions are weakened, adolescent girls from camps are married off at a very young age at an increasing rate. Such a situation hampers a girl's education. The situation is much worse for a girl whose parents have died. For them, survival sex often becomes the only way to support themselves and their families. Domestic violence in conflict-ridden areas can be due to the husband's frustration at not being able to do much about the present condition of the family. Men often channelize their anger on their wives by abusing and beating them, and the wives accept it as their fate. Camps are often attacked, and the fear of being the brunt of renewed attacks instills a sense of fear and insecurity in the minds of the inmates. When the men are away fighting, it is the women and children who are left in the camps, and more often than not there is no adequate security arrangement in place. Women are then vulnerable to attacks and live in constant fear. The second problem about women's sideline role in the decision making. Communal or ethnic conflicts affects a woman's authority. The authoritative role of a homemaker that played within the four walls of their homes is disrupted and diminished during her stay in the camps. During emergency, men often take over the work of managing the relief camps. This further sidelines the women's position in society. This deprivation eventually adversely affects a woman's mental health, economic well-being, and family relationships. On the other hand, women who lose their husbands or the male members of the family to conflicts have no option but to take over the responsibility of the family. This adjustment in role compels them to take up some form of employment to generate resources for the family. This challenging role can be very stressful. The third problem is the limited employment facilities. Women in relief camps are deprived of their livelihood and are unable to take up alternative income-generating activities. Our state has still not taken any initiatives in evolving a policy to address this lacuna. During their stay in relief camps, refugees and internally displaced women are confined to their respective camps or settlements as security risks are heightened during that time. The lack of movement makes it extremely difficult for women in relief camps to seek employment or engage in other income-generating activities. Where a woman does manage to find employment, she has to face increased security risks. The structural displacement of a family or a community limits the freedom of movement and employment opportunities for women of affected populations. In situations of conflict, women are often the first to become unemployed or underemployed. In many cases, women may be the primary or the only source of income. Due to the stress created by the collapse of livelihood systems, women have to take on increasingly non-traditional and high-at-risk occupations. These women and adolescent girls are replacing men who are in exile, in the militias, or have been killed during conflict. However, women who depend on casual labor and petty trade enjoy no labor protections and are often exposed to exploitation and danger. While discussing the problem of security of the women in relief camps, it is found that women and girls are most at risk. While discussing the problem of security of women in relief camps, it is found that women and girls are most at risk during the time of flight and their time in the relief camps. It is during this time that security requirements are essential. Women and girls in conflict situations are often reported to turn to illegal activities such as prostitution, brewing of alcohol, and trafficking of drugs, which offer them lucrative opportunities but carry a high risk of violence. These activities are time and again managed by organized criminal elements that are closely integrated with militias and warlords, relying on destabilized environments that comprehend such illegal pursuits. Therefore, the safety of the refugees and the internally displaced people depends on the efficient role played by the armed forces and international peacekeeping forces. The scenario has changed lately with recurring misconduct of the international peacekeeping forces and armed forces stationed at sites. As the number of missions and peacekeepers has grown, widespread accounts of the inappropriate behavior and sexual exploitation by peacekeepers have been reported around the world, notably in Haiti, Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Bosnia, Cambodia, East Timor, and Democratic Republic of Congo. In Bosnia and Kosovo in the year 1990s, UN peacekeepers helped support sex trafficking as customers of brothels relying on forced prostitution, according to Amnesty International. While discussing about the problem of health of the women in the relief camps, it has been found that survivors of conflict very often expand to several months and even years in relief camps. Relief camps in the state of Assam, India, in the district of Kokrajhar and Karbi Anglong, has been some of the worst affected conflict areas. In such situations, a woman is observed to have suppressed her sexuality. Due to unprecedented conflict situations, sexual relations with the husband are seen to be erratic. The woman loses her reproductive rights because she cannot even prevent an unwanted pregnancy, eventually compelling her to give birth to a child in very adverse circumstances. This further deteriorates the quality of women's health. There have been cases where women have delivered their babies in the camp without proper facilities and in poor sanitary conditions. expecting and lactating mothers need adequate care and nutrition, which is rarely found in the camps due to overcrowding. Women and girls of menstruating age often face difficulty during their monthly cycle. Lack of sanitary napkins undermines their opportunity to participate in community-based activities, food distribution, training programs, and employment opportunities. While menstruating, women are forced to stay back in their tents. It leaves them without any access to the limited opportunities available. The lack of sanitary materials compromises a girl's right to education. They are unable to attend school. This results in poor academic performances and eventually dropping out of schools. Mental health. Displacement can lead to severe depression and anxiety in women who witness their houses being destroyed, looted, and burnt down. Often, the displaced population developed post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). Victims of sexual violence suffer severe psychological damage. Sexual violence is widely prevalent in conflict situations because rape is often used as a tool to suppress the enemy. This eventually leaves the women with psychological scars. It is accepted that women's role as a caregiver is so embedded in many societies that even in most extreme situations, a woman will make an effort to take care of her family and her loved ones. Many women who fail to take care of their loved ones suffer guilt and helplessness. There is problem related to education of women in the relief camps. Now let us discuss the problem of education. During their stay in the relief camps, education of girls is often hampered. They often have to either drop out of schools to supplement the family income or voluntarily leave school out of fear of being killed or attacked. This eventually creates a psychological and mental block that affects them throughout their lives. Due to conflict, which escalates the risks of sexual violence, kidnapping, and other acts of violence, communities and family members fear sending their daughters to schools. I quote, "The threat of sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo prevented girls from attending schools," unquote. Efforts to develop alternatives for the education of girls are being made. One way is to hire female teachers who are willing to teach in conflict regions. Since conflict creates new communities like relief camps, community leaders can develop approaches for educating girls. Similarly, educators have found that building fences and walls around schools, holding school in a mosque or a community center, and creating stronger buildings for schools helps to sustain girls' education during conflicts. UNHCR guidelines for refugees also seek to ensure equal access to education for both boys and girls. Now let us discuss about how relief camps can help in motivating women, and that also depicts women's crucial role in peacemaking in the conflict zone and that the women of the relief camps. Lately, women have been seen to have played a crucial role in negotiating peace during times of conflict. It was discovered that women who have lived in relief camps often participate in peacekeeping programs. Such cases are very common in Uganda, where women not only participate as victims of conflict but also as combatants and peacemakers. This kind of participation depends on the cultural context victims live in, and this may vary from region to region. International women's organizations like Women Aid International, set up in the year 1987, work to provide relief and assistance to women and children suffering distress caused by war, disaster and poverty. UNHCR sets up women's committees in emergency locations. Volunteers from these committees form groups and go around the camps to talk and identify the varied problems women might have. The story of a relief camp inhabitant from the year 2014, violent outbreak in one of the village near the Bhutan border in the state of Assam. Story of a relief camp inhabitant from the 2014 violent outbreak in one of the village near the Bhutan border in the state of Assam. This example has been taken from the ANT, a voluntary organization based in the district of Chirang, working primarily in the same district of the Bodoland Territorial Area district. During the 2014 conflict, her family fled to Diosiri relief camp. While running to the relief camp in Diosiri, they managed to take only their ox, but the ox died when they were living in the relief camp. In the relief camp, the family received only 50 grams of rice per person per day. They also got dal and potatoes, but the rations they received did not last for many days and was over long before the next rations were distributed. After 3-4 months of staying in the relief camp, they returned to Koraiburi but found their house completely burnt down. They lost the paddy and mustard, which was yet to be harvested. They survived on jungle potatoes. Chita says they started eating rice only after she and her husband went out for daily wage labor. Their main struggles are around food, water and elephants. Since they lost their pair of bulls, they had to hire bulls for plowing and could cultivate fresh paddy in the year 2015 only. Later, with the money they got as relief from the NGO Oxfam, they managed to buy 4 bulls and cows. Now, before concluding, let us look at some of the key benchmarks in policy and protection developments for refugee women from the year 1990 to the year 2010. In the year 1990, UNHCR releases its first policy on refugee women. In the year 1991, UNHCR releases its guidelines on the protection of refugee women. In 1994, first full assessment of refugee women's reproductive health care needs. In the year 1999, an interagency field manual on refugees' reproductive health published. In the year 2000, High Commissioner for Refugees holds global dialogue with refugee women, resulting in the High Commissioner's 5 commitments to refugee women. In the year 2002, the Women's Refugee Commission completes an assessment of UNHCR's implementation of its guidelines on refugee women. In the year 2003, UNHCR releases SGBV guidelines. In 2004, the Minimum Initial Services Package MISP for reproductive health care included in spheres as a minimum standard. From the year 2004 to 2006, UNHCR rolls out its Age, Gender and Diversity Mainstreaming Initiative partially as a response to the assessment conducted in 2002. In the year 2006, UNHCR's Executive Committee adopts a conclusion on women at risk. In 2008, UNHCR releases its Handbook for the Protection of Women and Girls. In 2008, evaluation undertaken and completed on UNHCR's efforts to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. While concluding, it can be stated that in times of conflict, it is noticed that traditional and community ties break down, but also at the same time opens new spaces for women. It is seen that women takes up new tasks, especially non-traditional tasks, but it is not always the same in every conflict zones. It mostly depends on the history of the role of women in that specific area or local. Positive changes post-conflict do occur, but it depends on the social relationships, especially gender relations within the society. Positive changes include women's increased economic power, which sometimes increases their scope for influence and action. Changes have been seen in terms of a changed consciousness among women, which has often resulted in formation of women's organizations and associations. Increased awareness, raised consciousness, and women's newly gained economic opportunities have, however, not helped in changing the political and organizational influence for the empowerment and the betterment of the conditions of women in camps and post-conflict situations. Therefore, ensuring security of livelihoods, equal access to economic activities, and training women in survival skills, addressing health issues of women, leadership, and conflict resolution is important for the ability of refugee and internally displaced women and girls to cope under difficult circumstances of women in relief camps. Without secure livelihood opportunities, women have higher chance to resort to prostitution and other illegal employment opportunities. In Colombia, for instance, large numbers of internally displaced women and adolescent girls reported that they had no alternative but prostitution to support themselves. The state feels that if the inmates of a camp are fed and clothed, they should be all right. But what the state does not realize is that women do not enjoy living on doles. They want to be self-sufficient. They want to do something for a living. Women of the region are skilled weavers. Campsites have become common phenomena because of increasing political, economic, and ethnic clashes all over the world. Such campsites often aggravate the risk factors for women, including gender-based violence, health risk, and their status as a girl or a woman. The interventions by international humanitarian organizations for the protection of affected women are inadequate and need constant reviewing because news of international peacekeeping forces exploiting women have been reported. The loopholes even in humanitarian aid need to be addressed also. Therefore, we have seen that how women have faced different problems in the relief camps, which has been documented in this module, and this module has also focused light on the women's peacemaking role, particularly in the conflict zone. Thank you.